Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to do our final panel tonight, which is going to be on what's coming up in Scotland. In the last few days, we've been reaching out to various partners to hear news that they'd like to share with us. And so we'd like to begin with Celtic. We're going to hear from Celtic Connections, Dunfermline, the Carnegie Pit and Creef project, from the Fringe, from the Perth Museum, who have exciting things ahead, the library, the National Library of Scotland, and the V&A Dundee. And so without further ado, we're going to try to pull all this together with clips and a little bit of from me, but let's start. And we're going to start with Celtic Connections. Over 2,100 musicians from around the world bring the city to life for 18 days. During that time, there are concerts, ceilidhs, exhibitions, workshops, and free events. If one thing makes the wintertime in Glasgow great, then it's Celtic Connections, the Guardian noted. We're also encouraging them to look at what they can do about streaming again, because during COVID, many of these concerts were streamed, and especially the BBC ones. And so we're very hopeful that if not this coming year, but by 25, they will have some streaming going again, because I think it would be great if there could be a little bit of that as well, because the caliber of music and all the new acts that are there are fantastic. And then we turn to Dunfermline, Carnegie, and the Pit and Creef project, which is a really wonderful project that it reflects Andrew Carnegie and his legacy. And I caught up with their executive director, and we're just going to tell you a little bit about it, because trying to bring people up the east coast of Scotland is a wonderful idea as we tell our members and friends about what they're doing. So let's go to Dunfermline.
Andrew was born in a little cottage on the outskirts of Pit and Creef estate. It was a private estate at that time, and his family's cottage, was based just outside the gates. And Andrew used to peer through the gates into this wonderful estate and gaze and wonder. And he really wanted that to be his playground. He thought it was such a beautiful place. So he used to climb over the gates and then get chased out by the gamekeeper. So he took great delight when he made his fortune in coming. Andrew was born in a little cottage on the outskirts of Pit and Creef estate. It was a private estate at that time, and his family's cottage, was based just outside the gates. And Andrew used to peer through the gates into this wonderful estate and gaze and wonder. And he really wanted that to be his playground. He thought it was such a beautiful place. So he used to climb over the gates and then get chased out by the gamekeeper. So he took great delight when he made his fortune in coming back to Dunfermline and actually buying that private estate and gifting it to the people of Dunfermline. And Pit and Creef today is a public recreational park, and that's what our project is doing just now. At the heart of the park, there is Pit and Creef houses, the former laird's house of the park, and it's a beautiful 16th century building. It has a strong historical link in there. There's several families connected to that house who also went to America. So, for example, General Forbes, who named Pittsburgh, he was was born and brought up in Pittencrieff House. And there's strong connections because the park sits next to Dunfermline Abbey and Palace. Dunfermline used to be the ancient capital of Scotland, so there's strong royal connections, and there's also connections to Robert the Bruce, who is buried in the abbey next to the park, and William Wallace, who also spent time in the park. So there's several families involved in the house as well. And the house has been lying empty for a few years now, but it has got huge potential. So what we're wanting to do is to reopen and repurpose the house as a visitor experience centre, which tells these wonderful stories of all the families and the history of this beautiful park, but also use the house for weddings and events and exhibitions. It's a lovely space to do that. And so that's what we're planning to do through this project.
So it is only 45 minutes, an hour from Edinburgh. It is easy to get to. There's lots of things to do there in Dunfermline. And also, if you go to the festival in August, soon after that, in September, there is a festival at Dunfermline. So it's a great place to stay at and then take yourself north from there, if you want an alternative to staying in Edinburgh. So talking of August, what can we have to touch upon the Fringe. And so we'd like to share with you an update from the Fringe, which is back at full strength and doing so much again. So can we now hear from the Fringe, Sam?
The Edinburgh Festival Fringe is one of the greatest celebrations of arts and culture on the planet. It's open to anyone with a story to tell and a venue to tell it in. Our vision is simple: to give anyone a stage and everyone a seat. Taking place since 1947, the Fringe attracts a vibrant array of artists and audiences from all over the globe. Surpassed only by the Olympics and the World Cup in terms of global ticketed events, in 2023, the Edinburgh Festival Fringe issued 2.4 million tickets. More than 25,000 artists participate in the Fringe each year, and more than 180 countries have been represented on stage during the festival's history. With over 3,500 shows in a typical Fringe programme, it would take longer than 20 weeks to see everything on offer. There's no single person or organisation that runs the Fringe. However, the Fringe Society was established by artists in 1958 to nurture and uphold the Fringe's values of inclusivity, experimentation and imagination, something the charity continues to do to this day. Our job is to ensure the Fringe remains a platform for freedom of creative expression that's open to all. We exist to support, advise and encourage everyone that wants to participate. And, of course, we celebrate the Fringe and what it stands for all over the world. The Fringe spirit shines brighter than ever before, and we're delighted that year after year, the festival continues to captivate and inspire artists and audiences alike. As long as there are artists with a story to tell, we'll be here to help them tell it.
2023 felt like an absolutely joyous return of the Edinburgh Fringe. It's been really difficult, really challenging over the last few years. The impact that COVID has had on the whole creative sector has been really well documented. But I think the Fringe in particular, because our artists are largely self-financing. The festival has had a history of its own circular economy over its first 76 years. So it's been really challenging. And then in 2023, after those challenging few years, to come back and feel positive and joyous, and tonally the whole festival felt really different this year. 2024 and 2025 we're focused on recovery, but we're also focused on not only ensuring that the future of the Edinburgh Fringe is the biggest performing arts festival in the world, but much more importantly, it is the best experience that it can possibly be for artists, for audiences, for the media who come to cover the work and review the work, and for the arts industry who come to look for that talent and look for the shows. So we've got our work cut out for us. We've got a very public-facing vision and values that we launched with our president, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, in 2022. It was just great to be celebrating the joy again this year and to know that we've got big challenges, but we've got a reunited Fringe community to really help through collaboration and collective approach. We can make it happen. The Fringe has had a long and positive history with our friends and colleagues from the theatre and performing arts world in America, from David Schwimmer, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Ruby Wax, indeed the brilliant Robin Williams. All of them have left their mark, and equally the Fringe in Edinburgh has left its mark on those incredible artists.
In New York, we have East to Edinburgh, which is done by the 59th Street Theatre Group. And they had 13 companies that went over to Edinburgh this year. They also then look for new plays and works there. And they have a festival which is about the ones that come from Edinburgh to the States. But I was told that there were hundreds of companies that went over. And I think if we, as Scottish groups, were to speak more about that and know more about that, we could be very helpful to them. Because when they go over, they are only getting the money from the box office about 2 to 3 months after they have performed at the Fringe. It's a very tough thing for them. And they have to raise a lot of money to get over there. So let's see what we can do to be helpful to them and to bring awareness to the programs they're doing and when they're over there. So they want to go back to Scotland. So then the next highlight that I'd like to talk about is Perth Museum. And the Perth Museum is going to be the new home on long-term loan, as they put it, of the Stone of Destiny, the Stone of Scone. And so let's, I hope, without more ado, hear from them.
Hello, greetings to the Scottish North American Community Conference. I'm delighted to be on the other end of the line here to just say a few words to you about our up-and-coming new museum in Perth, and in particular the display of the Stone of Scone, or the Stone of Destiny, whichever you prefer. And the museum is been the subject of nearly 10 years of development. It's in a historic building in the centre of Perth, what was the former City Hall, which was built at the turn of the 19th century into the 20th. And we are going to have on display there huge amounts of archaeology and history spanning the end of the Ice Age through to more recent times. And there'll be substantial amounts of archaeology relating to the prehistoric past and also to the medieval past, particularly of the town or city of Perth. And then, so there's lots of star elements in there, including elements of Pictish sculpture. The other big star element that we're really pleased to be hosting is a loan of the Stone of Scone, which will have its own special chamber in which it will be displayed. And people will get 2 audio visual experiences. In an antechamber, they'll get an introduction to the story of the stone, including some of its myths, including the taking of the stone by Edward I, including the retaking of the stone by Scottish students in 1950, and including more recent coronations. And that'll be told through, as I say, an audio-visual experience. And then people will be able to go into an inner chamber and see the stone itself, the only exhibit in the room in its own case. And we'll try and evoke in that room a sense of what Alexander III's his inauguration was like in 1249. The stone, of course, will be coming here on long-term loan. This will be its home for the foreseeable future. The only circumstances in which it will leave us for short durations is whenever there are coronations in the future, when it will go back down to Westminster to play its role in the coronation of all future monarchs. And we open Easter weekend in 2024, and people will be able to book timed tickets. It's free entry. There is no charge for those tickets, but you'll be able to book timed tickets online, and we'll supply the details of the link for that. And in the new year, and there will be big celebrations throughout the town on the day that the new museum opens, involving various celebratory community groups and events and things. It will be a massive party, I guess, is one way to describe it. Thank you.
And so I would then like to tell you, I cannot ever forget how Charlie Sherwood, a few years back now, probably in 2018, 2017, came and told us about Sir Walter Scott's anniversary that was happening a few years in advance. And it gave us all the opportunity to go away and think about what we were going to do to celebrate Sir Walter Scott. And so today I wanted to share with you news from the National Library of Scotland. They will celebrate their 100th anniversary in 2025. And they're going to come over during Tartan Week just to find out a little bit more, get involved in a few events, and start to plan and think about what they can be doing to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the National Library. And it's not only books, it's also their library over in Glasgow of all the films and tapes and everything you can think of, any way of sending a message of any time. So you've got the Kelvin Grove side of things, which is the moving image basically in newspapers, and then you've got the books, which are over in Edinburgh. And so let's start thinking, and they want to do a lot of things and would love, I know, to hear from different organizations. And finally, I wanted to tell you and share an update from the V&A in Dundee, who've been doing a wonderful exhibit, as many of us know, around tartan. They are the design museum. They opened just 6 years ago. And so let's learn a little bit about what they are going to be doing this coming year.
Design is a really interesting thing because it's really the application of human creativity to solve a problem. But for me personally, and I think for V&A Dundee, it is those extraordinary, exquisite things that some of the most creative minds in the world have thought about. It's also our social history. It tells the stories of who we've been, who we are at the moment, and who we're going to be as a society. So design is about the stuff that we hold, we dress in, the places we live, what we gather around ourselves to create our own identities as people.
So what become?
Wow, it's incredible. Oh, this is great. You can see the whole city. It's beautiful. What a view.
V&A Dundee is Scotland's design museum. We're a young design museum, And that just means that we can be so ambitious and think really creatively about how we engage people with design through all that we do.
Right, so our robot's called Bebop. He's a robot to prevent like loneliness and isolation in schools.
And the brain.
And he's got a brain. There we go. That's fab.
The Schools Design Challenge is a design project for S1 and S2 pupils, which was encouraging them to take a problem that they might face in their day-to-day lives and to use the design process to come up with a solution.
It's called the social hive because it's a bit like hexagons to represent like a beehive.
The point with this was to like combat loneliness, so being able to play with other people and things that you like will bring people together.
This was perhaps their first real experience of what a design museum is, but more importantly, it opened their eyes to what design can be.
The learning programme creates lots of entry points for people to explore design and to apply design to their own lives. We started to work with Kindred Clothing, who are part of a charity called Front Lounge in the Hilltown in Dundee, and that's a social empowerment project.
Look how messy it is on the back, but like how cute it could be in there.
Before like Kindred and like coming to the V&A for all the projects, I just didn't do anything. Like it was just a mum like going to baby group and that was it really.
We got offered like loads of different fabrics to work with. We learnt all these different techniques by using threads and hand embroidery. Yeah, the teal as well would be nice. The confidence it's brought out in me is really amazing.
A lot of community groups come in and they don't appreciate what they're really capable of. So being able to see them surprise themselves, to see their skills grow and their connection with each other grow is always really rewarding. Where I want to be is that we're an asset for the community, that people see us as an accessible partner and feel that they can come to us with an approach and that we will be a supportive team.
It's hard to like truly define what the Young People's Collective is. For me, it's a platform for young people to have their voices heard within the gallery, but also provide experiences and opportunities you wouldn't otherwise have had. We helped co-design the opening ceremony for the museum, being asked for opinions, given suggestions, and they felt that they were all taken very seriously. Through all that, I now find myself on the board for V&A Dundee. It feels very much we're all in it together, we're all trying to figure out what we want, and we're all working together towards a goal.
Everybody, a round of applause, thank you.
I realise that that is an important step and a really powerful thing to have. You know, you want a young person's voice, get them in the room when decisions are being made and having their voices literally heard.
There is a lot of opportunity related to the museum, which were not there in the past. And for the people that are getting graduated now, I think it's such a comforting thing for them, because if we want to change mentality, we have to educate people. And I think it's been great to have this place somewhere to grow.
I've never worked in an organisation with such a sense of the difference it can make, such a sense of energy that it can be world-class and deeply local at the same time. I can see the change that we make every day. I can see the way that audiences react when they come in, but also the way that we work in alliance with the city's wider aims. It's just amazing to be part of a young organisation that's utterly committed to the potential and joy that design is.
I think it's helped expand a part of my creative mind. Creating stuff like this can help with dreams that I pursue.
This spring, they will open an exhibit on kimonos. That will be opening, I believe, at the end of January, beginning of February. And it's just the most wonderful place to go. So again, Dunfermline, up to Dundee, and then up to Aberdeen. So just think about that wonderful East Coast as a wonderful route to take and suggest to your members. And finally, one of our dear friends and close partners is the Peter Wilson of Scottish Heritage USA. And Peter is going to now share with us some thoughts that he wants us to all think about the Tartan Museum that is here in the United States that he sees as a hidden gem. And so now I'm delighted to be joined by Peter Wilson, who's president of Great Scott International and also Scottish Heritage USA. So Peter, as you join us today at the conclusion of the Scottish North American Community Conference, could you tell us about something you chatted with me about at Grandfather Mountain that I think is very, very exciting? And that is what you are planning and trying to do around tartans and a tartan museum.
Okay, well, first of all, Scottish Heritage USA have supported the museum, which is based in Franklin, North Carolina, which is up there in the Appalachian Mountains. And we've supported them financially for some of their display cases and maintenance of their facilities there. And they really have an outstanding collection of Scottish artifacts, from kilts to uniforms to weaponry and so on. And the gentleman, the curator, a fellow called Williamson, has done a fantastic job at really making it just a wonderful place to visit. The problem is that Franklin's not exactly on the beaten track. It's about 40 miles south of Asheville, North Carolina, which perhaps doesn't sound too far, but it is off the beaten track. It is our understanding that only half of the exhibits are on display at any one time, simply because lack of space. We, of course, would like to have suggested that the museum be relocated to a more accessible location, but that's not really, that may happen one day, but not right now. But in the meantime, with the exhibits that are in storage, it may be possible to have a traveling exhibition. So we've just got to find locations where that could happen. And at the moment, it's very much in its infancy, but the idea has been sown. And I think the people who run the museum are relatively warm to the idea. So that's where we're at the moment. But, you know, Scottish Heritage USA, you know, we're a separate organization, but we've supported the museum because we think it's very important from the point of view of heritage.
Well, I think if we can, so this is wonderful news and a wonderful project to look forward to. And if we, as members and our other people who are joining us today, have ideas and thoughts of how they might be able to help with this whole project, can they should reach out to you directly?
They certainly can. Yep, they can do. I have an email address, which is president@scottishheritageusa.org. So they can use that email address by all means.
Well, I think the idea of being able to think of locations where the exhibit might happen, and then to work out how to do it in an economic, great way and have it travel. I think that the SNACC committee will be interested to chat about that and see how we can help. And you're closely aligned with us on that.
Right.
See how we can take all this forward. But fantastic. It's lovely to hear this news. Thank you.
You're most welcome. I just, you know, we hope it might happen, but we can't force the issue. We need to get the folks there on our side. I mean, Franklin's it's a pretty little town up there in the North Carolina mountains, and
and because they're called the Tartan Museum, how representative do you feel? And you're very involved in weaving and the textiles. You're part of the Tartan Authority. How important a collection do you see this as?
Well, I think it's a jewel. It really is a jewel here in the United States. I mean, in Scotland, there is no such museum. Now, there is an exhibition going on at the V&A in Dundee, which is proving to be extremely successful. Dundee being, associated with textiles, but there's a whole collection of Scottish artifacts that are also in storage over there in Scotland that the Tartan Authority owns. And but right now they too can't find a location of where it could be put on display. There are some exhibits at the National Museum in Edinburgh, but
talking America, talking the US, the museum of the Tartan Museum sitting in Franklin is, to your mind, a jewel, and therefore I think we need to buff the jewel and see what we can do to help.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter. And now we all have a challenge.
Okay. Thank you very much, Camilla.
Talk to you anon.
Yes, indeed.
As we finish the conference today, we're going to do a wrap-up session in a moment. And so I'd like to ask John King Belisai to join me up here. But I think that's a challenge for all of us to think about trying to take forward. And I'd love to see a traveling exhibit and to be doing it. And I think, as you'll agree, Peter Wilson is an ideal person to broker it and to work and to lead on this.